"Do you remember that dream you told me about?" she whispered in my ear with a fun tone. I was still a bit surprised and could not respond right away. She looked a little red in the face and smelled like strong drink and smoke, but that was usual for her night out with friends. Every Thursday, she and her two best friends would go to the theater or just eat dinner and drink a little too much at one of the popular bars in town. What was not usual was that my beautiful, graceful wife had just walked in the door followed by a good-looking man in a nice suit. He looked about 25, around 10 years younger than us. "Who is he?" I managed to ask. "He is here to help us," she said, then paused and added, "Of course, only if you want." Suddenly, she did not look so sure and fun anymore. I love my wife when she has that strong look. It is how I like to remember her when we first met. Two young workers who thought nothing could stop us. I saw it again when she walked in the door and knew that my answer was important. A small hint of sadness in my reaction had slipped into her voice. I would do anything to keep the confident woman I convinced to marry me 10 years ago around a bit longer. The years had been good to us and we were still very much in love, but not as free and hopeful as we had been. "Sure," I said slowly, and kissed her neck lightly, trying to gain time. "Tell me what you had in mind." I was not sure at all which dream she meant. With my busy mind, it could mean anything from a sweet ice cream treat on a camel in the desert to a big party from old times. Judging by her fun smile, I thought it had more to do with the party kind. "Well," she explained, "I told Alessia and Thalia about it tonight. I hope you do not mind." She stepped back a little to look in my eyes so she could see if I was upset or not. I still had no idea if I should be upset or not, so I just smiled back and told her it was fine. I mean, they are her best friends. If we cannot trust them, who can we trust? "I am so happy you are fine with it," she said quickly. "In fact, without them, I never would have had the courage to do it. But they liked the idea and said they were jealous I had such an open husband. They found this guy at the bar, told him everything, and brought him over to me. I never expected to get this excited about it." She finished her words without stopping for air. I'm excited by her unexpected boldness. She pulls me in closer and says, "But I have a condition." She lowers her voice and looks deep into my eyes. I nod, a bit unsure as we hold each other. "You have to do what I ask, even if it's not what you planned. This is my dream now. When I ask you to do something, for me, you have to do it. James has already agreed. Will you do it for me?" I pause, but manage to hug her a little tighter. I had almost forgotten about James in the doorway. But now, I remember the dream she's talking about. About 6 months ago, I shared a fantasy where I watched a handsome man with her. Our time together is usually passionate, but this was about something raw and different. She asked if I would touch him too. I said it would depend on how she felt, because I love seeing her lose herself in the moment. In those times, I would do anything she needed. We've been with other couples before, so she knows I'm not against it, but am not interested in men either. She had quickly dismissed the idea then, saying she preferred exploring with another woman instead. We never mentioned it again. Until now. I think about what this means. When my wife is like this, she is both sexy and passionate, but also vulnerable. She can be adventurous, but she doesn't cross certain lines. I smile, knowing her well. Our marriage is still vibrant and alive. I understand what she might want. She might ask me to help guide him so that she can fully enjoy herself without holding back. My smile lasts for about 3 seconds while I watch James loosen his tie. In those moments, my mind races with fearful thoughts, awkward dinners where we avoid looking at each other, feeling strange when I kiss her, and worrying about what to tell our friends if we take a break. The excitement I felt shifts into something heavy in my stomach. I watched as James unbuttoned his shirt and suddenly realized I was about to see a stranger get too close to my wife. This wasn't some fantasy I could stop whenever I wanted. It was happening right there in my living room, where our wedding pictures watched from the shelf. My mouth felt dry. "You know what?" I said, pressing my fingers to my head and squinting because the light bothered me. "I think I'm about to get one of my bad migraines." I turned to James, hoping to look sincere. "I'm really sorry, man. This isn't going to work tonight." My wife's expression changed, but James gave me a knowing half-smile as if he understood. "No worries," he said, putting on his jacket. "These things happen." I walked him to the door and even offered to call him a ride. We shook hands like two friends finishing a business chat, not like I had just interrupted him with my wife. After he left, I turned to see her standing there, barefoot now after kicking off her heels hard enough to leave marks on the wall. For a moment, neither of us spoke. I counted her breaths short and quick, making her chest rise and fall. The house felt still, almost like even the refrigerator was holding its breath. "What just happened?" I finally asked, though my voice sounded more tired than angry. "That was me trying to save our marriage," she replied, her voice cracking. "I was trying to be the partner you dream about instead of the wife who curls up with you to watch TV every Thursday night." The alcohol was fading, and tears were starting to run from her eyes. She looked younger in that moment, like the girl I met years ago who cried during a movie on our third date. "You invited a stranger into our home," I said carefully, trying to understand. "You talked to Alessia and Thalia about our private life. I was going to give you what you wanted." She was crying now, her makeup smudged. "Do you know what it's like to feel unseen in your own marriage? To wonder if your husband even notices you anymore, or if you're just part of the background?" "So your answer was to be with some guy you met at a bar? You said you wanted it. Months ago you described watching another man with me. You even said you'd be right there, remember? Or was that just another one of your empty dreams that you don't actually want to happen?" She had a point. I had said those things. But talking about it during a late-night chat was different from having someone named James in my home. "Alessia dared me," she said, her voice now softer. "I never thought I'd be this way," I admitted. "It feels like I'm just another suburban spouse who isn't really living but puts on a brave face. And you know what? She was right. When was the last time we did something that excited us?" I wanted to argue and mention our recent trip to Cabo, but I understood what she meant. We had spent the vacation reading different books on the same beach and having quiet dinners, sharing a brief intimate moment with the lights off. We were that couple safe and comfortable, slowly fading into boredom. "I need to sleep," she said, starting to head upstairs. "I'll take the bed and you can sleep on the couch." But then she turned back and said something that would keep me up all night. "I almost went through with something just to see if you'd actually stop me, to see if you still cared." I didn't sleep. At 3:47 a.m., I gave up and opened my laptop. Her Gmail was still logged in since we never hid our passwords from each other. As I scrolled through her inbox, looking for, what? Clues? Answers? I noticed something that made my heart race. A new email address I didn't recognize. When had she made that? It felt like discovering a hidden room in my house. How long had it been there? What else was I missing? By 4 a.m., I shifted from the laptop to my phone, searching for home security cameras online. I told myself it was for safety. We had talked about getting cameras since our neighbors were robbed last year. But my shopping cart filled with specific models. One to see the bedroom clearly, another for the front door, and a third for my office. Each camera's location was planned, and each reason I told myself was a lie I could believe later. I installed them the next morning while she was in the shower. It took less than an hour. The camera facing the bed was hidden in the smoke detector with a bit of electrical tape over the light so she wouldn't notice it. The door camera went inside a plant. The office camera hid behind some books. As I worked, it felt like I was getting ready for a battle, though I couldn't identify the enemy. She came downstairs wearing my old college sweatshirt, the one with a hole in the shoulder. She had made my favorite breakfast, a tasty frittata with spinach and mushrooms, topped with fancy goat cheese. The effort felt so calculated it stung. "We need to talk," she said, sliding a piece of paper across the counter. It had 3 therapists' names in her neat handwriting. "I already called. Dr. Martinez has an opening on Thursday." I nodded and took a bite of the frittata that tasted bland. "Okay." "Okay?" She looked surprised I agreed so easily. "Yeah, okay. We clearly need help." Under the table, I texted my brother. "Do you know any good private investigators?" "I'm asking for a friend." She reached out and took my hand. "I'm sorry about last night. I drank too much and did something foolish." "It's okay," I said, squeezing her fingers while worrying about the cameras that were recording us. "Well, sort it out." But I had already begun to make my own plans. After she left for her yoga class, I sent a message to my lawyer friend Mike. "Quick question about shared property if cheating happens." Then I deleted it and instead wrote, "Available for lunch this week? I need some advice." As I watched the sunrise from our kitchen window, I remembered the door closing on James last night. It felt like another door had opened, one that led to a darker place. I could sense myself stepping through it, even though I knew I should turn back. The coffee maker made its usual noises, the neighbor's dog barked, and life went on. But nothing felt normal anymore. I didn't want to see my wife with someone else, but that choice broke something between us, something that might have already been broken. Now, here I was, the guy with hidden cameras in his home, texting lawyers on a Saturday morning, pretending everything was okay while noting the signs of our relationship crumbling. When she returned from yoga, she was glowing and smiling as if nothing had happened. "I was thinking we could try that new Italian restaurant tonight," she suggested. "Maybe pretend it's our first date again?" "Sounds good," I said, already questioning whether she really went to yoga or if she met him instead. The camera app on my phone would reveal the truth later. For now, I smiled back and pretended I still believed in us, even as I felt myself changing, becoming anxious, calculating, and ready for a fight. That night at dinner, she wore the red dress I had given her for our anniversary. She laughed at my jokes, held my hand across the table, and playfully touched my foot during dessert. It was both wonderful and painful. Every small action felt like either an apology or a show, and I couldn't figure out which it was. "I love you," she said while enjoying tiramisu. "I love you too," I replied, and I meant it, which somehow made it all feel worse. Thursday came too quickly. Dr. Martinez's office looked just as you'd imagine. Beige walls, a fancy couch that probably cost more than my monthly payment, and tissues placed everywhere. The doctor looked polished, like someone from a department store catalog, dressed in understated jewelry, with a calm smile that likely worked wonders for most couples. My wife wore her serious outfit business, casual, with light makeup, and her hair pulled back in a low bun to look more mature. She even brought a notebook, which felt a bit much. "So," Dr. Martinez began. Martinez leaned forward and asked, "What brings both of you here today?" We exchanged glances, unsure who should speak first. Finally, my wife cleared her throat. "We had an issue last week," she said carefully. "I made a mistake while drinking, and it's highlighted some problems in our marriage that we need to talk about." A mistake? That's how we were describing bringing someone unfamiliar home while I was there. I kept my expression calm, but I noticed how she chose her words to downplay everything. "I understand," Dr. Martinez said, jotting down notes. "And how do you feel about this incident?" She turned to me. "Blindsided," I admitted. "We've been married 10 years. I thought we were happy." "Were you happy?" Dr. Martinez asked, and the way she used the past tense made my heart sink. I thought so, I replied. I wasn't, my wife said quietly. Even though I had suspected this, hearing it felt like a sharp blow. I love him. I love our life. But sometimes I feel unnoticed, like I'm just going through the motions. Dr. Martinez nodded as if this was common. How long have you felt this way? Maybe a year? My wife twisted her wedding ring. It really started when Tom joined my department. Tom. This was the first I had heard of this person. I kept my face calm, but I noted the name. Tom from her work. He seemed to be a turning point in her happiness. Tom's just a colleague, she quickly added, looking at me. But he pays attention, like when I get my hair cut or wear something new. He remembers how I take my coffee. And your husband doesn't notice these things? Dr. Martinez asked. I notice, I replied defensively. I just don't make a big deal out of it. But maybe she needs that attention, Dr. Martinez suggested gently. The rest of the session was similar, her feeling ignored and me feeling criticized, both of us avoiding what had really occurred. We set up another meeting for next week and walked to our cars in silence. Tom, huh? I finally said. Don't start, she replied, her cheeks turning red. He's just a friend. That night, after she went to bed, I looked at her Facebook. Tom Brennan, marketing director, divorced with 2 kids. His profile picture showed him at a charity 5K, smiling broadly. He had liked all her posts for the past 6 months, leaving comments like, looking great and lucky husband. I switched to her laptop. She had left it open on the kitchen counter. Her browsing history was mostly clear, but she had overlooked the search history in Gmail. How to tell if a coworker likes you? Is emotional cheating real? Marriage counselors? Near me. These questions were lingering long before the recent incident. By our 3rd therapy session, things were getting worse, not better. She had started smoking again, going out onto the patio after dinner with a glass of wine and a pack of cigarettes. She thought I didn't see. I began taking pictures of her through the window with my phone, telling myself I was collecting evidence for the divorce that seemed inevitable. You chased me so hard when we first met, she told Dr. Martinez during that session. I never really learned how to want things for myself. I got caught up in what you wanted. That's not true, I interrupted, forgetting we were supposed to express our feelings calmly. You were the one calling me late at night. You were the one who brought food to my place wearing that lovely dress. You moved in so quickly after our 3rd date. Because that's what I thought you wanted, she replied sharply. You made me feel special, like I was the only one for you. But then once we got married, it was like you were done, moving on to something else. Dr. Martinez was taking notes. Let's talk about this feeling of being a project. But I wasn't paying attention. I was thinking about the messages I had found the night before, texts sent from a number she didn't have saved. Can't stop thinking about you. My husband is working late again, while I was in the next room. Miss you, with 3 heart emojis, all dated from 2 weeks ago. The number turned out to be from a temporary phone, but I had my guesses about who was sending them. At dinner that night, I decided to test my theory. How's Tom doing? I asked casually, cutting into my steak. She stopped fork halfway to her mouth. What? Tom, from your work. You mentioned him in therapy, just curious. Has fine. Why? No reason. Maybe we should invite him over for dinner sometime. I'd like to meet the guy who knows your coffee order. Her slight reaction was telling, a quick change in her expression that I noticed. That could be nice, she replied cautiously. I'll ask him. But she never did. 3 nights later, we had a big argument. It started over something small. I had forgotten to buy milk on the way home. But it quickly grew. You don't care about this marriage, she shouted, banging on the cabinets. You're just going through the motions acting like coming to therapy is a chore. I'm not the one messaging other people that I miss them, I said softly. She looked shocked. You checked my phone? I didn't need to. You're not as careful as you think. That's not fair, she said, and began packing a bag. I'm going to my sister's. No, you're not, I replied. You're going to Tom's, just like when you went to his place 2 weeks ago under the excuse of working late. She didn't argue. She took her bag and walked toward the door. We're done, she said. I'll get my stuff this weekend. After she left, I sat in the dark living room, watching the footage of her departure. She sat in her car for 5 minutes before driving off, and I could see she was upset. Part of me wanted to chase after her to make things right, but the other part, the part that had grown stronger since that night with James, just felt worn out. I pulled up recovery software again and found more messages from the past months. It felt like digging up the remains of my marriage, hiding in deleted texts and cleared histories. Tom had been around longer than I realized, maybe even before she began to feel invisible. The house felt empty without her, but somehow also lighter, like I'd been living with a problem that had finally been fixed. I poured myself a drink and opened my laptop, starting a spreadsheet. Assets, debts, signs of betrayal. A document that would please my lawyer. My phone buzzed. A text from her read, I'm sorry. I didn't reply. Instead, I took a screenshot and saved it to my evidence folder. Then I went back to the footage, watching her leave again, searching for signs I might have missed. Wondering if that was when our marriage truly ended tonight, 2 weeks ago, or even earlier when Tom began to take note of how she liked her coffee. The therapy was supposed to help us. Instead, it became a way to keep track of our breakdown. Dr. Martinez might even write about us someday, the couple who used therapy as a battleground, turning each session into another fight in a war we had already lost. 3 days later, my phone started buzzing with credit card alerts. The Meridian downtown, $342 for the room, another $127 for room service, then $58 at the hotel bar. So much for staying at her sister's place in the suburbs. I hired a private investigator. My brother suggested a guy named Frank, who looked like the ex-cops from movies, complete with coffee stains on his shirt and a car that smelled like smoke. It cost $500 a day plus expenses. He texted me within 4 hours of starting. Your wife is at the Meridian. She is not by herself. The photos started arriving around dinner time. I saw her in the lobby, smiling at something on her phone. Then there was a picture of her at a cafe table, with Tom, of course. It was Tom, his hand on her back as they walked. The last photo hit harder. She was wearing the red dress I bought for our anniversary, the same one she wore to dinner just a week ago. Tom's hand was on her leg. I stared at that photo for probably 20 minutes, drink in hand, trying to feel something other than tired. Anger would have been nice, even sadness, but all I felt was an empty recognition, like when you finally get the ending of a movie you didn't understand. That night I did something foolish. I downloaded Tinder. Not to meet someone I wasn't ready for that, but to see how easy it was. How simple my wife had found it to change our life. 3 matches in the first hour. Sarah, 28, yoga teacher. Jennifer, 31, marketing manager. Ashley, 26, bartender. All of them friendly, all of them interested, all just a swipe away from pulling me further from my marriage. I deleted the app before I could make a choice I'd regret, but the knowledge lingered how simple it was to find someone new. How many choices were just waiting? Frank called the next morning while I was pretending to work from home. He said, I have something interesting for you. We met at a diner near the highway, the kind of place where people mind their own business, and the coffee isn't great. So I did some checking on that James guy, Frank said, sliding a folder across the table. James? I thought she was with Tom. She is. But I thought you might want to know about this other guy too, the one from that first night. He pointed to the folder. James Morrison, 32, married for 7 years. His wife works at Children's Hospital. They have 2 kids, 5 and 3. I opened the folder. There was James with his picture-perfect family. In the photo, they all wore matching sweaters. His wife was lovely in a tired mom kind of way, with kids hanging off her while James smiled confidently behind them, just like he had in my home. "Does his wife know?" I asked. "Not likely. She works long hours. He tells her he's at meetings." I paid Frank in cash and drove home with James' family photo sitting in my passenger seat. By the time I pulled into my driveway, I had made up my mind. It took me 10 minutes to create a temporary email account and another 5 to find his wife's email on her hospital bio page. The message was simple. "Your husband is at the Meridian Hotel, room 412, thought you should know." No name, no extra details, just enough to spark a reaction. My wife came home 2 days later on Sunday afternoon. I was in the garage pretending to organize tools I never used when I heard her car arrive. She looked worn out. Her eyes were puffy, her hair was in a messy bun, and she wore the same clothes she'd had on when she left. "James had a family emergency," she said, leaning against me. The smell of hotel soap and Tom's cologne made me want to step back, but I held on. "His wife found out about everything. She's taken the kids. It's a big mess." I ran my fingers through her hair, trying to be supportive while remembering the email I'd sent. "That's awful," I said. "Are you all right?" "I don't know what I'm doing," she sobbed. "I'm really struggling. Tom says..." "Tom says what?" She pulled back, realizing her mistake. "Nothing. He's just been a friend through this." "Right. A friend who meets you at hotels." Her face fell. "You had me followed. I checked our credit card statements. The hotel isn't exactly your sister's guest room." She began to argue, but then just deflated. "I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. Can we try to fix this?" That night, we were close in a way that felt like the world was ending. It was intense, filled with anger and guilt, and it left us both feeling worse. She cried afterward. I stared up at the ceiling, listening to her breathing change as she fell asleep. Around 3 a.m., she whispered a name that wasn't mine. The next morning, she tried to act like everything was normal. She made breakfast, hummed while cooking, and kissed me goodbye as I left for work. But I noticed her checking her phone every few minutes. Her disappointment when it wasn't the person she seemed to be waiting for. I spent my lunch break working on spreadsheets. I organized financial accounts, bills, assets, and debts, color-coding everything and cross-referencing it with the evidence Frank had gathered. My lawyer friend Mike had given me a list of what I would need for divorce proceedings. I was checking off items methodically, just like I would with tax documents. On Tuesday, Frank sent more photos. Tom's car was at our house while I was at work. They were inside for 2 hours. I had the camera footage, but couldn't bring myself to watch it, not yet. On Wednesday, James's LinkedIn updated to say he was taking time to focus on family. By Thursday, it changed to seeking new opportunities. I took screenshots, adding everything to my growing folders of evidence. The fallout I set in motion was spreading, affecting lives I had never met. James's children would grow up with divorced parents, and his wife would have trust issues for a long time. All because my wife and her friends thought it would be exciting to act on a fantasy. That weekend, she suggested couples therapy again, with a new therapist that Alessia recommended. "I think we need more than therapy," I said. "What do you mean?" "I mean, maybe we need some real space to understand what we truly want." She began to cry again. Lately, it felt like she was either crying or pretending everything was okay. There was no middle ground. "Is this about Tom?" she asked. "It's about James and Tom and everyone else. It's about you making a secret email account. It's about the trust that's lost. I can fix this. Can you? While you were at the Meridian, I was here looking at new apartments. While you were with Tom, I was meeting with lawyers. We aren't fixing anything. We're just acknowledging the damage." That night, she left again. She didn't say where she was going or take much with her. I watched her car disappear. then went back to my work. Frank texted me around midnight. "She's at Tom's place. Want photos?" "No," I replied. "Just the address." I saved it on my phone, unsure of what I would do with it, but having it felt like I had some control, and right then, that was all I had left. She returned 3 days later with flowers, real flowers, as if she were the one apologizing. I was in the kitchen making dinner when she came in, holding a bouquet of white roses and a bottle of the nice wine I liked. "I ended things with Tom," she said before I could say anything. "I told him we can't even be friends anymore. I blocked his number and removed him from everything. I'm asking to switch to another department." She was crying again, but these were different tears. Not angry or guilty. These tears came from someone who had reached rock bottom and wanted to get back up. "Okay," I said, turning back to the stove. "Dinner's almost done." My casual reply seemed to break her. She sank into a kitchen chair, crying so hard she could barely breathe. I let her cry while I served the food salmon, asparagus, and the garlic mashed potatoes she loved. When I put her plate in front of her, she looked at it as if I had done something amazing. "You made my favorite," she whispered. "Yeah, well, you're still my wife." We ate in silence for a while. Then she began to talk, her words spilling out in between bites. How Tom had started as just a friend. How he listened when she felt ignored. How one drink after work led to another and then to moments in his car. "But I never went that far with him," she said, looking me in the eye. "I know it sounds unbelievable, but I promise we never went all the way. Just some kissing. Maybe a little touching, but never. Never more than that." I wanted to laugh. After everything, she was trying to show she was better because she had only gotten close to Tom, not crossed the final line. But I just nodded and poured more wine. That night, she tried to get close. She came to bed wearing the nice lingerie I had bought her 2 years ago. But when she kissed me, all I could think about was Tom. I turned away and said, "I need time." "Of course, I understand," she replied. But I could feel her crying silently beside me, the bed shaking a bit with her sobs. The next morning I did something that surprised both of us. I booked a trip to Paris. It would be at the same hotel where we had our honeymoon, with the same restaurant reservations and even the same room, if they could arrange it. I handed her the confirmation email at breakfast. "Our anniversary is in 3 weeks," I said. "I think we either fix things or decide to move on, but we should know by then." She hugged me tightly, tears of joy in her eyes. "I will make it up to you. I promise. You'll see." The next 2 weeks felt like a movie about a perfect marriage. She made fancy dinners every night, left sweet notes in my laptop bag, and bought me the watch I had been wanting for months. She was trying so hard that it almost hurt to watch, but I was playing my own game. Little things at first, forgetting to kiss her goodbye in the morning, taking phone calls during dinner, working late without sending a text. Each small act was meant to subtly push her to seek my attention more. The biggest moment came during our intimate time together. We started being close again, but carefully, as if we were fragile. Right in the middle of it, when she was almost there, I paused and said, "Sorry, Lisa," using her sister's name instead. She froze. "What did you just say?" she asked. "What?" "Nothing. Why did you stop?" The confusion and hurt in her eyes were striking. She didn't bring it up again, but sometimes I caught her looking at me, trying to understand if I really had said that, or if she had imagined it. That Thursday, her friend Alessia called me to see if I wanted to grab coffee. She said she was worried about my wife and wanted to check in. We met at a Starbucks near her office. "She told us about Tom," Alessia said, stirring her drink. "I'm really sorry. We had no idea it had gone that far." "How far did she say?" I asked, pretending to check my phone while actually recording. "She mentioned they had been talking for months. It started at that conference in Chicago back in January." She lowered her voice. She said they kissed in the hotel bar after the dinner. January. 3 months before she brought James home. 6 months of lies. But she loves you, Alessia continued. She kept saying that. Even when she talked about Tom, it was always about how you were not around anymore. Not about her feelings for you. Is that supposed to make me feel better? Alessia asked, shrugging. I'm just sharing what I know. I think she involved James to mess things up with Tom. Like, by bringing you into something with another guy, she thought it would change everything. That's not right. Yeah, well, we're all a bit complicated, aren't we? Thalia called 2 days later with her own concerns. I met her for drinks after work. After a few martinis, she began to share everything. She was really into him, Thalia said, her words a bit slurred. Always talking about Tom. She showed us his Facebook all the time. Once she even just sat in her car outside his apartment for an hour. Never went in, but still. When was this? Maybe 6 weeks ago? Just before the whole James situation. I think she was trying to figure out what was real and what wasn't, and she made the wrong choice. I recorded everything. Every talk, every confession, every detail I could gather. I was building my case. The night before Paris, I made her a scrapbook. It had photos from our entire time together, college parties, our wedding, vacations, and quiet nights on the couch. The last 20 pages were blank. For our future, I said when I gave it to her. She broke down, crying hard. I don't deserve you. I don't deserve any of this. No, I said softly. You don't. She looked shocked. But I'm trying to forgive you anyway, I continued. I need your help to understand. I need the truth. All of it. I've told you everything. I showed her a photo Frank had taken. Her car at Tom's apartment complex. This was 3 months ago. Try again. She stared at the picture for a long moment. Then she took a deep breath. Okay. Everything. Her confession took 2 hours. She talked about the conference in January where Tom praised her work, the lunches that turned into coffee and drinks, the first kiss in his car after a company event in February, and the deleted texts and secret emails. She even mentioned the times she said she was at the gym but was actually parked outside his place, gathering the courage to go in. I never did, though, she insisted. Never went in. Never was with him. But you wanted to. Yes, I wanted to so much. But I couldn't. Even when I was upset with you. Even when I felt ignored. I couldn't cross that line. So you brought James home instead. That was different. I thought if you were part of it, if it was something we did together, it wouldn't be cheating. It would be an adventure. I'm going to do what we talked about. That's the most foolish idea I've ever heard. I know. I was feeling low, and Alessia kept saying it would be exciting. Alessia pushed you to this? She nodded sadly. Both of them did. They said I needed to do something big to fix my marriage. They thought you'd enjoy it based on that story you told me. I remembered Alessia's worried conversation and Thalia's concerned words. They had sparked this, and now acted like good friends. I need to ask you something else, I said, and I can tell if you're not being honest. Have there been others, besides Tom and what happened with James? No, I promise, on my mother's life. Just Tom, and you never went that far. I understand. We sat quietly for a while. The room felt heavy with unspoken truths. Do you still want to go to Paris? She asked at last. I'm not sure, I replied honestly. Let me think about it. But deep down, I had already made up my mind. We were going to Paris. I planned to treat her well and convince her that we could heal from this. Then I would deal with everything she had done to me, slowly and carefully, just as she had done. She thought telling me everything would save us, but instead, it gave me a timeline for how to handle the situation. We never made it to Paris. 2 days before the trip, I found a receipt. She had left her purse on the kitchen counter while she was in the shower, and it slipped out when I moved it to grab my keys. It was for emergency contraception from a week ago, right in the middle of our supposed reconciliation. I stood there, holding that small piece of paper and thinking. We had been intimate 3 times that week. She had also been working late twice. The pharmacy stamp showed a late time, and she had returned home after a couple of hours, saying her computer crashed and she needed tech support. When she came down, her hair still damp and humming a song, I held up the receipt. "What's this?" The color faded from her face. It's not what you think." "Really? Because what I think is you're seeing someone else while we're trying to fix our marriage." No, I was just scared. My period was late, and with everything going on, I panicked. I didn't want to take any chances. Take chances with what? Having my child or someone else's? She started crying, which I expected. Yours. I haven't been with anyone else since I ended it with Tom. I told you that. Your credit card shows you were at the Meridian last week. For lunch. With my sister. Call her if you don't believe me. I called her sister right there, on speaker. And to my surprise, she confirmed it. I even sent pictures of them at the hotel restaurant. But the damage was done. That receipt changed everything for me. That night, after she went to sleep, I got on my laptop and started working. I had been in cybersecurity for 8 years before moving to project management. I still had all my tools and remembered all the tricks. James Morrison's company email was surprisingly easy to break into. He used his child's birthday as his password. What I found was impressive. He had been adding extra expenses for years. Nothing too big. Maybe $50 here, $100 there. Calling client dinners that were really just dates. Billing his gym membership as client entertainment. Even putting his personal subscription on the company card and labeling it as LinkedIn Premium. I could have just sent everything to his company's HR. But that didn't seem exciting. Instead, I spent 3 hours writing the perfect anonymous email to their audit department, using a VPN to hide my location and bounce off servers in 12 countries. I included just enough evidence to start an investigation, but not so much that it looked suspicious. I made it seem like a concerned colleague had noticed something unusual. Then I dug deeper. I found his personal email, his Instagram, and his wife's Facebook. He was careless. His passwords were similar everywhere. I started taking screenshots. Every flirty message, every late-night ride receipt, every hotel booking. I made a nice collection of James Morrison's mistakes. My wife brought me coffee at 2 a.m. and found me working on my laptop. "Big project?" she asked, rubbing my shoulders. "You could say that," I said, quickly switching away from James's messages. "Should be done soon, though." "I love how hard you work for us," she said, giving me a kiss on the neck. "I don't deserve you." "No," I replied. "You don't." She paused but continued rubbing my shoulders. This was our new way of relating, her often apologizing while I made things harder whenever I could. James's downfall began the following Monday. First, his company announced a routine check of expense accounts. By Wednesday, he was on leave from work. On Thursday, his LinkedIn profile changed to looking for new opportunities. I saved each update in a folder called Justice, but I wasn't finished. Remember that family photo I had seen? The one with his attractive wife and 2 young kids? I kept thinking about those kids. 5 and 3 years old, they were innocent. They didn't deserve what was coming. But neither did I deserve to have my wife bring him into our lives. I created another temporary email. I sent his wife one simple message. Check his phone bill for calls to the Meridian Hotel. That was all it took. She was smart. Very smart. The kind of smart that knows exactly what to look for once someone points her in the right direction. My phone rang Friday afternoon. Unknown number. Is this Tom? A woman's voice, professional but shaky. No, wrong number. Sorry, I'm looking for, never mind. I recognized that voice. It was the pediatrician. She was looking through her husband's phone, calling numbers she didn't know. The fact that she reached me meant she found my wife's number in James's phone. The web was tightening. Saturday morning, Frank called. Your boy James just got served with divorce papers. In the parking lot of his kid's soccer game. His wife is serious. Good for her. There's more. Word is she has a financial expert checking everything. Seems your boy might have been hiding money. This could get serious. I felt nothing. I should have felt guilt, maybe, or satisfaction. But it was just nothing. Like watching a building come down from far away, interesting, but not emotionally engaging. My wife found me in the garage that afternoon, staring into space. You okay? She asked. James's wife is divorcing him. She went pale. How do you know that? I have my sources. Did you have something to do with this? I looked at her for a long moment. He made his choices. That's how life works. Oh my God, she whispered. What have you become? I became who I am because of you, I said, going back to organizing screws I'd never use. Don't blame this on me. That night, she went to her sister's. Real sister's house this time. I checked the cameras I'd set up weeks ago. She sat in Lisa's kitchen, drinking wine and crying. I could read her lips on the footage. Hez destroying everything. Good. Let her feel what I felt. Monday rolled around with a new surprise. A text from an unknown number. We need to talk, James. I met him at a coffee shop downtown. He looked terrible stubble, wrinkled clothes, the tired eyes of a man whose life had fallen apart. You did this, he said right away. Did what? Don't act innocent. The audit, my wife, all of it. You ruined my life. No, I said, stirring my coffee. You ruined your life. I just made sure everyone found out. She was practically begging for it, he said, and there was something harsh in his voice now. Your wife, coming on to me at that bar, saying her husband didn't pay attention to her anymore. I wanted to hit him. Instead, I pulled out my phone. Say that again. What? What you just said. Say it again. I want to make sure I get it right for my lawyer. He slumped. What do you want? I want you to write a confession. Everything that happened. How my wife's friends arranged everything, how much she had to drink, and what was supposed to happen that night. All of that. Why would I do that? Because if you don't, I will make sure every future employer knows why you left your last job. I'll make sure your wife's lawyer gets some interesting details about your hidden assets. He'll make your life so hard that you'll wish you had never entered my house. He stared at me for a long time, then took out a notepad and started writing. I was reading his notes when my wife came in. I had been so focused that I didn't hear her car or check my phone. What is going on? She asked, looking between us. Business meeting, I replied. That's not true. She turned to James. Leave. Now. James almost ran out of the coffee shop. My wife sat down across from me, and for the first time in weeks, she wasn't crying. She just looked worn out. You're hurting him, she said. You're hurting both of us. I'm seeking justice. No, you're seeking revenge. There is a difference. Not for me. She let out a short, bitter laugh. You know what's messed up? I created this situation. The man I married would never have acted like this, but I changed him, and now he's hurting everyone else. We're not victims anymore, she continued, standing up. We're the bad guys now, both of us, and I don't know how to live with that. She walked away, leaving me with James's notes and a cold cup of coffee. Outside, it had started to rain. I stayed there for another hour, reading his shaky writing, which described how my wife, after drinking too much, had approached him, how her friends had planned everything, and how they thought it would save our marriage. The coffee shop played soft music on repeat. Couples came and went, holding hands, laughing, living their normal lives. And I sat there with my evidence, my revenge, and my hollow victory, wondering if hurting James had been worth becoming someone I didn't recognize. My phone buzzed. It was Frank. James just checked into a mental health facility. He went voluntarily. His wife's lawyer will be interested in that. I deleted the text and drove home to my quiet house, my cameras capturing nothing but shadows, my evidence folders filled with a chaos I had caused but couldn't change. The tickets to Paris were still on the refrigerator, held up by a magnet from our honeymoon. I tossed them in the trash, then pulled them back out. Why not? I would go alone. May as well enjoy what was left of what we once had. James's LinkedIn became a slow-motion disaster that week. I refreshed his profile every few hours, watching his professional life fall apart in real time. Monday, 8:47 connections. Tuesday, 7:12. By Friday, 4:31. People were pulling away like I had something contagious. Comments on my old posts disappeared. Recommendations from former colleagues vanished. It felt like everyone was trying to avoid me. Frank sent me screenshots of gossip from industry Facebook groups. Anyone know what happened with James Morrison? Heard some bad stuff happened. My company just cut ties with him. Divorce, audits, and legal troubles all at once. I felt nothing. I should have felt something like success or guilt, but it was like watching paint dry. Just another item checked off my list. Wednesday afternoon, I caught my wife in the bedroom looking at James's profile on her laptop. She was crying quietly, tears flowing like a leaky faucet. "Checking on your old friend?" I asked from the doorway. "He's not my whatever." She shut the laptop hard. "His kids are getting bullied at school. Did you know that? His 5-year-old came home with a black eye because some kid's parents said his dad was a criminal." "That's not my issue." "It is everyone's issue." She tossed a pillow at me but missed badly. "We did this. We hurt an entire family because we couldn't deal with our own problems. He made his choices when he came to our house. And I made mine when I invited him here," she said. "We're all villains in this story. No heroes, just varying degrees of wrong." Frank called that afternoon. "Your wife just walked into a Starbucks on 5th Street. James is already there. Send pictures." They arrived 5 minutes later. My wife and James sat at a corner table, looking worn out like they were just going through the motions of being alive. The last photo showed them hugging goodbye. Not a happy hug. More like the kind you give at difficult times. She came home 2 hours later, heading straight to the wine cabinet. She poured herself a glass of the fancy burgundy we were saving for our anniversary. Then another glass. Finally, she brought the whole bottle to the couch. "I ended things," she said, staring at the ceiling. "Officially. Finally. Thought you already did that with Tom, then with James. It's getting hard to keep track." James was never. We never. She took a big sip of wine. "He couldn't focus that night. Did you know that? The night you sent him away. He took something to help, but was too nervous to go through with it. That's why he left so quickly." I actually laughed. "So, all this chaos happened because of a nearly broken relationship with a guy who wasn't even able to perform?" I asked. "The chaos was about a marriage that was already over," she replied. "James was just part of it. Tom was just part of it. The real problem was us." That night, she drank heavily. She began listing every complaint from our entire marriage. The time I drank too much at her father's funeral and spoke my mind to her uncle. The loss of the baby that I had only mourned for 3 days before I stopped mentioning it. The job opportunity she missed because I had argued with her boss's husband at the holiday party. My mother, who never liked her and whom I had never stood up for. "And you were always watching," she said, her words slurring. "Even before the cameras, always keeping track of my mistakes, building your case, waiting for me to mess up so you could be the victim. You brought a stranger home to be with you right in front of me. After years of feeling like just a roommate. After years of you treating me like a checkbox on your list of life achievements. We went back and forth for 3 hours. 10 years of frustration pouring out like a wound that needed to be cleaned. By the end, we were both hoarse from yelling. Then, surprisingly, we started kissing. Angry, desperate kisses that mixed with the taste of wine and tears, signaling the end of everything. We ended up being together right there on the living room floor. It wasn't love, it wasn't passion. It was just instinct, two people who knew each other's moves, sharing one last moment. After that, we lay there staring at the ceiling. She began to cry again. I probably did too, but I felt too numb to be sure. I'm giving you divorce papers tomorrow, I said. Okay. I've already filed. Mike prepared them last week. Okay. I want you out by Monday. Okay. She got up and walked upstairs. I heard the shower start. I stayed on the floor for another hour, feeling the carpet pattern press into my back, wondering how we reached this point. The next morning, my phone buzzed with a message. She was at James's apartment. It was 9 a.m. on a Thursday. She had called in sick to work. I grabbed the divorce papers from my office safe and drove across town to the rundown complex where James had moved after his wife asked him to leave. Her car was parked crooked, as if she had been crying too much to park straight. I knocked on apartment 4B. James answered, looking puzzled. Behind him, I could see my wife on his couch, fully dressed and holding a cup of coffee. Really? I said. It's not what it looks like, she began. I don't care what it is. I handed her the papers. You've been served. Your house key won't work when you get home. I changed the locks an hour ago. Your things will be in boxes in the garage. You have until 6 p.m. Monday to pick them up. James stepped forward. Listen, man. Be quiet. You're lucky I don't hurt you right here. I looked back at my wife. Your lawyer can reach out to Mike Brennan. His info is in the packet. I turned to leave, but stopped. Oh, and that tracking app on your phone? It works both ways. I know about the pregnancy tests you bought yesterday. 3 of them from different stores, paid in cash. Were you hoping for different news each time? Her face went pale. James looked confused, moving between us. Good luck figuring out whose it is, I said, and walked out. The drive home felt strange. Traffic, sunshine, normal people living normal lives. The radio talked about some political news that seemed small compared to my situation. I stopped at a red light next to a couple in a car, laughing about something on their phone. I wanted to warn them, to tell them to be careful because love can lead to trouble. Instead, I drove home to my empty house. I sat in my office, looking at the screens showing feeds from my cameras. Empty bedroom, empty kitchen. Empty living room where we had shared our last moment together 12 hours ago. Frank texted, "She's back at James's. Want me to keep watching?" "No," I replied. "We're done." I spent the rest of the day packing her things, methodically and carefully, wrapping her grandmother's china in bubble wrap, folding her clothes neatly. I even added the love letters I had written her in college, tied with the same ribbon she had used. Each box was labeled clearly. Kitchen, bedroom, memories. The last one was the toughest our wedding album, honeymoon photos, and the stuffed elephant I had won her on our second date. 10 years packed into cardboard and tape. She came for her things Sunday night. I watched from my office window as she and her sister loaded boxes into a rented truck. She looked up once, noticed me, and gave a small wave. Not a goodbye, just an acknowledgement. Like we were strangers who had been through something heavy and were now going our separate ways. Which we were. Monday morning, the divorce papers were filed. Tuesday, my lawyer called. She wasn't contesting anything. An equal split of possessions, no support payments, a clean break. The easiest divorce Mike had ever handled, he said. Usually, There's at least some argument over the coffee maker. We're too tired to fight anymore, I told him. That's either very healthy or very sad. Both. It's both. 2 weeks later, Frank sent one last update. James had moved back in with his mother in Ohio. He lost his kids in the custody fight, with limited visiting rights. His wife got everything else. My ex was living with her sister and had moved to a different job. The situation with Tom had settled. He took a job in Seattle. Should I keep an eye on her? Frank asked. No. Let her go. I deleted the camera app from my phone and packed away all the monitoring tools into a box labeled Never Again. I started seeing a therapist who focused on trust issues and dealing with the end of relationships. She said I had PTSD from the betrayal and that my quest for revenge was a reaction to the trauma. She used a lot of terms like processing and integration. But what she didn't say, and what no one really says, is that sometimes you need to break things down to understand what you had. Sometimes the person causing harm and the one being hurt are the same, just at different moments. My ex-wife and I had built a marriage based on expectations and dreams. It took a poor choice, letting James into our lives to show us what we truly were. Not a couple, but two people who were great at pretending. The damage we left was painful. James' job was ruined, his family was broken, our marriage ended, and friendships were lost. It was awful, yet it felt honest. Finally, it was refreshingly honest. Revenge isn't really about hurting others. It's about shattering false ideas. Once that illusion is gone and you've cleared the ground, you can leave and find a new place, even if you have to go it alone. The first deposition was set for a Tuesday morning in Mike's conference room. Seeing my soon-to-be ex-wife walk in with her lawyer felt strange, like seeing someone familiar yet different. She had lost weight and cut her hair short, wearing a business suit I hadn't seen before. Her lawyer was just what you'd expect, an assertive woman in her 40s who claimed to protect women's interests on her website. She came out strong. Your client set up monitoring devices in the home without my client's knowledge, she stated, showing photos across the table from my Amazon purchases. He also made dating profiles while still married. Mike slid forward his folder. Your client was involved in several emotional and potentially physical affairs. We have proof of hotel stays, deleted messages, and a timeline of deception over several months. Allegedly, her lawyer replied. We have photos, credit card statements, and a written statement from James Morrison. My ex flinched at the mention of James's name. Then she said something that changed everything. James has pictures of me. The room went quiet. What kind of pictures? Mike asked carefully. Personal ones, from that night. He took them when I was drunk right before my husband sent him away. He's been threatening to send them to my job if I don't. Her voice trailed off as she looked at her hands. If you don't what? I asked. If I don't help him with his divorce. I have to tell his wife it was all my fault that I chased him, that he was drunk. It has to look like I was the one at fault. I stared at her. He's blackmailing you? She nodded, tears starting to form. He has been for weeks. I have the texts. Her lawyer showed us the messages on her phone. They were harsh, with details about what he would do with the pictures, where he would send them, and how he would ruin her career. Mike looked at me, and I nodded. We need to add criminal charges to the filing, he said. That afternoon, I received a call from an unknown number. I almost didn't pick up, but something urged me to answer. Is this Tom? A familiar voice asked. No. You've called me before. This is James's ex-wife, the pediatrician. Dr. Morrison. Please call me Kate. I think we need to talk. We met at a cafe downtown. She looked tired but determined, carrying a heavy laptop bag. I've been doing some research, she said, opening her laptop. James isn't who we thought he was. She showed me a private Facebook group called The Hunt Club, made up of 47 men. The description sounded odd. Gentlemen discussing relationship dynamics and social strategies. Look at the posts, Kate said. My stomach sank. They were sharing tactics, rating conquests, and trading tips on identifying vulnerable targets. Married women with absent husbands were the top scores. There were spreadsheets. Is my wife on there? Kate clicked through to find a file. There she was, a photo from her company website with details laid out like a profile. Husband travels frequently. I didn't. Responds to attention. Who doesn't? Friends can be used. Alessia and Thalia. Her score, 8.5 out of 10. Successfully started contact. Progress interrupted by spouse. Good potential for success. I rushed to the bathroom and got sick. When I returned, Kate had ordered us coffee. There's more, she said. James has done this before. Multiple times. I found divorce records from Nevada. He was married there 5 years ago and never told me. The divorce claim mentions emotional abuse and deceit. Wow. I've been in touch with 3 other women, and they have similar stories. They all met James or someone from this group at bars, through friends, or at conferences, and all were married. Everyone was having tough times. We need to inform the police, someone said. I already did. They are gathering evidence, but I wanted you to know first. She took a moment. Your wife was targeted on purpose. This wasn't by chance. They went after her. I thought about Alessia and Thalia at that bar, bringing James to my wife. Were her friends part of this? Kate opened another document. Payment details. Your wife's friends each got $500 through Venmo. The records say dinner, but the timing fits. They betrayed her for $500? Looks that way. We spent the next few hours putting together a timeline, checking everything against each other. The conference where Tom first talked to her, he was involved with the group. The therapist Alessia suggested linked to one of the members. Even the bar they visited for girls' nights was a known trap. This is unbelievable, I said at last. She never stood a chance. Neither did we, Kate replied. They target couples who are already struggling. They make things worse, then step in to comfort the women while the relationships fall apart. I drove home, feeling lost. My anger and desire for revenge felt empty now. I had been playing a simple game while they were strategizing with our lives. That night, I did something I promised I wouldn't. I reached out to my ex. We need to talk. Not about us, about James, about everything. She replied right away. Thank goodness, I'm scared. We met at our old coffee shop. It felt eerie, like visiting a sad place. She looked frightened and kept glancing around. I know about the group, I said. Kate filled me in. Kate? James's wife? We're working together on this. The FBI is involved now. She started to cry. I'm such a fool. I thought Tom cared. I thought Alessia and Thalia were my friends. You were targeted. It's not your fault. But I still made my choices. You did so based on tricked feelings. They knew how to manipulate you. They had a playbook. We sat quietly for a moment. I'm sorry, she finally said, for everything. For bringing James home, for Tom, for what happened to us. We were already in trouble, I admitted. They just attacked the weak points. Does this change anything for us? I thought hard about it. No, we're still done, but maybe we can end things without anger. She nodded. I started real therapy, not the one Alessia suggested. I discovered I have a pattern of seeking approval from others. It goes back to my childhood. I'm in therapy too. Apparently, I struggle with control issues and trust, which were present even before your affair. The cameras were just a sign of the problems we faced, not a solution. We were in a tough spot, weren't we? Easy targets. The following week was a blur of legal meetings, FBI interviews, and gathering evidence. Mike worked closely with her lawyer to stand strong together. The divorce process was ongoing, but the tension lessened. We were two people trying to sort out years of shared life, realizing we had been taken advantage of by some bad people. Kate and I met often to strengthen our case. She was smart, organized, and fiercely dedicated. We discovered 12 more women involved, 3 other groups in different cities, and financial mismanagement amounting to over $200,000. "They are like leeches," Kate said one day, pointing out another link. "They latch on to troubled marriages, take away their money and respect, then move on to the next one." My ex started going to a support group for women affected by this network. I attended a different one for hurt spouses on different nights. It turned out we used the same community center, even the same room. There was a shared journal for people to write anonymous notes. I recognized her handwriting right away. She wrote about feeling ashamed, about missing the good parts of our marriage before everything fell apart. She didn't mention what I had done or my plans against James. I wrote about feeling regretful, about becoming someone I no longer knew, and about wishing I had fought for our relationship instead of against her. I didn't sign my notes, but I knew she would recognize my messy writing. We never talked about reading each other's entries, but we kept writing. It created a strange kind of connection, almost like we were having a silent conversation in the same space, but at different times. The depositions picked up speed. The FBI agent sat in the corner taking notes. James appeared on a video call from jail. He had been arrested for blackmail. He looked smaller and defeated on the screen. When they showed him the evidence Kate and I had collected, he broke down and began naming names, revealing the whole network. It turned out there were police officers, lawyers, and even a judge involved. The situation was larger than anyone had thought. "Your wife was unique," James said, staring directly at the camera. "Usually they just give up. She fought back. That's why I had to get the pictures just in case." I wanted to reach through the screen and confront him, but instead I stayed still while Mike squeezed my shoulder. "My client has nothing more to say to you," Mike said coldly. By the end of the month, 17 arrests had been made. The Hunt Club was in the news, but they kept the names of the victims private. My ex and I finalized our divorce the same week the first guilty plea was announced. "Weird timing," she said as we left the courthouse. "Everything about this has been strange." We stood on the courthouse steps, officially divorced, joined only by our shared experiences and the legal challenges ahead. "Take care of yourself," she said. "You too." We walked to our separate cars, drove to our own homes, and began healing on our own paths. But we were connected now in a different way, not as a couple, but as survivors of the same difficult situation, each heading toward different futures. 6 months after the divorce was finalized, I found myself moderating a support forum late at night. I was not drinking, plotting revenge, or watching old videos. I was genuinely helping people. It started simply. I shared my story on Reddit under a different account. Within 12 hours, I received many messages from people living through similar hardships. Men and women who had been betrayed and mistreated. People eager to know they weren't alone. After the affair launched 2 weeks later, it was a basic website, just a space for hurt spouses to share their experiences without being judged. In the first week, 200 people joined. By the end of the first month, there were 2,000. 3 months in, we had groups meeting in person across 6 states. The twist wasn't lost on me. I'd moved from following one person to helping hundreds. Meanwhile, my ex had found her own way to cope. She mentioned it during one of our case preparation meetings. "Your ex-wife is teaching self-defense classes now," she said, looking at her phone. "Free classes for women, every Saturday at the community center." I looked at the flyer she showed me. There was my ex in workout clothes, demonstrating a self-defense move. She looked different, stronger, not just in her body, but something in her expression had changed. "Good for her," I said, and I truly meant it. The trial was set for September. 13 women were ready to testify against James and his group. The prosecution wanted both my ex and me as witnesses, her for the attempted assault, me for the aftermath. I began writing about everything, not a revenge blog or a bitter ex-use band's rant, Just the truth about how manipulators operate, how they identify targets, how they isolate and confuse victims. I posted these stories as fiction on a writing platform. Within weeks, I attracted thousands of readers and received many messages saying, "This is exactly what happened to me." Publishers started reaching out to me, offering good money for a book deal, but I turned them down. Some stories shouldn't be turned into a product. Some pain shouldn't be sold. The trial began on a Tuesday, and I sat in the gallery, watching my ex take the stand. She wore a simple blue dress, her hair pulled back, and had little makeup on. She looked like a typical mom, not someone who had brought a stranger home while her husband watched. "Mr. Morrison targeted me on purpose," she said, her voice calm. "He knew my weaknesses. They had a plan." The lawyer guided her through what happened step by step. How he approached her at the bar, the way he manipulated her, the pictures he took without asking, the attempts to blackmail her. He said if I didn't lie to his wife, he'd send those photos to my job, my parents, and post them online, she explained. He said he would make sure everyone knew what kind of person I was. James sat at the defense table, trying to look sorry, but I saw him smirk when she mentioned the photos. That little smirk showed he still felt he had control over her. "How did this affect you?" the lawyer asked. My ex paused. "I wanted to end it all. I mean that, really. I had pills saved up, had a plan. The only thing that stopped me was knowing it would prove him right, that I was weak, worthless, exactly what he said I was." I didn't know about her plan. I sat there in that courtroom realizing how much hurt we had all caused each other. James's lawyer tried to make her seem like she wanted this. They talked about Tom, the emotional affair, and how she'd invited James into our home. "You dated other men while married, right?" "I was targeted by several predators while I was vulnerable," she replied. "That's different." After her testimony, I followed her to the parking lot. I wasn't stalking. I just wanted to make sure she was okay. That's when James attacked me. He came out of nowhere with a tire iron, yelling about how I had ruined his life. The first swing hit me in the shoulder. I partly blocked the second with my arm and heard something crack. There would have been a third swing, but courthouse security tackled him. "You destroyed everything!" he screamed as they put handcuffs on him. "My kids won't even look at me! This is all your fault!" Blood ran down my arm, soaking into the ground. My ex appeared suddenly, pressing her scarf against the wound. "Don't move," she said. "An ambulance is on the way." "Nice moves," I mumbled, feeling faint. "Thanks. I've been practicing." In the emergency room, while I got 23 stitches and a cast for my broken arm, something odd happened. I felt relieved. Not because of the injury, but because James finally showed everyone who he really was. No more charming businessman, just a violent person with a tire iron. My ex stayed with me the whole time. She brought me coffee from a good place nearby, not that hospital stuff. We didn't talk much. We didn't need to. She held my good hand while they worked on the other arm. It was the first time we had touched in 6 months, and it wasn't about paperwork. "He's finished," she said softly. "With this attack on top of everything else, he's going away for a long time." "Yeah. Do you feel justified?" I thought about it. No, just tired. Really tired of all of this. The attack became news. "Divorced husband attacked at corruption trial" was the headline that stuck. James faced new charges: assault and attempted murder. His lawyer dropped him, and even his mother stopped visiting. But the bigger news came during the investigation. The FBI discovered payments to Alessia and Thalia dating back 2 years. Not just the $500 for introducing James, but regular payments for pinpointing targets among their friends. My ex found this out during a follow-up interview with the FBI. I heard about her reaction from Kate, who was present. "She didn't cry," Kate said. just went completely silent, then asked if she could see all the evidence about her friends. She spent 3 hours going through everything: financial records, text messages, emails. Her closest friends had betrayed their entire social circle. The betrayal by Alessia and Thalia hurt her more than anything from James or Tom. These were women she'd trusted completely. They had been there for her in tough times, even at our wedding. They had sold her out for money. She turned her pain into motivation. She began teaching not just physical self-defense, but also how to be aware of psychological tricks, like manipulation and gaslighting. Her Saturday classes grew to 3 times a week, attracting women from nearby towns. Meanwhile, I kept developing the forum. I added resources for legal help, therapist contacts, and safe houses. I set up a system to keep harmful people away and partnered with organizations supporting domestic violence victims. We were both trying to rebuild from the wreckage, not together, but in parallel, both dealing with the same loss but rebuilding in different ways. One night, while I was working late on the forum, I received a message. The account was anonymous, but I recognized the writing style. "Thank you for what you're creating. It would have helped me see the signs sooner. Am proud of you." I stared at it for an hour before replying, "Your classes are saving lives. Proud of you, too." That was all. No further exchange. Just 2 people recognizing each other's growth. The investigations continued for months, and each discovery was worse than the last. Police who had ignored reports, lawyers who had concealed assets, a therapist who had shared information with those who hurt others, and even a judge who had always sided with the husbands in these cases. The Hunt Club wasn't just a Facebook group. It was a whole community made to take advantage of vulnerable women and break up marriages for fun and profit. But the thing about communities is that when you shine a light on them, they can't survive. By the end of the year, 43 men had been arrested across 7 states. The story became national news. The Hunt Club files turned into a Netflix documentary. They asked me to be part of it. I said no. My ex did too. I remembered something my therapist said. You and your ex-wife were a perfect match in your problems. Your need to control and her need for attention created a harmful bond. Others just took advantage of what was already broken. She was right. My need to keep an eye on things, my worry and my urge to document everything started before the affair. Her desire for attention from other men and her need for approval were always there too. We were a disaster waiting to happen, and James and his group were ready to strike. During the last week of James's trial, my ex and I ran into each other at a cafe. It wasn't planned. We just both happened to be there near the courthouse. She was in workout clothes, getting ready to teach a class. I was in a suit, getting ready to testify. "How's your arm?" she asked, nodding at my cast. "Better. The doctor says 2 more weeks." "Good." We stood there awkwardly, 2 people who had seen each other at their worst trying to make small talk. "I've been thinking," she said finally, "about us. About everything. We were both hurt and hurting each other. Maybe that's just what marriage is: 2 people causing each other pain and then blaming each other for it." "That's quite a thought," I replied. "Yeah, well, I teach self-defense now. I see a lot of tough situations." She started to leave, but turned to look back. "For what it's worth, I'm glad you reached out to James' wife. I'm glad you stopped him. Someone had to, and I was too broken to do it myself." "For what it's worth," I said. "I'm sorry I became someone you felt you had to protect yourself from." She smiled, not happy, not sad, just understanding. We both changed into people who needed protecting. At least now we're becoming people who can help others. She went to her class, and I went to testify. James received 5 years for the assault and 3 more for fraud and extortion. His whole network fell apart. Alessia and Thalia got 18 months each and had to register for their roles in exploitation. The forum now has 50,000 members. Her self-defense program grew to 12 locations. We took our pain and turned it into something positive. We still wear our wedding rings on chains around our necks. Not meant for each other, we had a brief talk about it once during a chance meeting. She wears her ring as a reminder of who she doesn't want to be anymore. I wear mine to remember what happens when you confuse possession with love. That's growth, I guess. Or at least, that's what we tell ourselves when we try to help others avoid our mistakes. The final decision came on a rainy Thursday in November. Almost 2 years after that night, my ex brought James home. It was the last of the Hunt Club trials, 43 convictions in total. The judge labeled it one of the most extensive predatory networks ever prosecuted. I sat in the back row watching it all come to an end. My ex was 3 rows up beside Kate Morrison. They had somehow become friends, bonded by their shared past. When the judge announced the final guilty verdict, they hugged. I just felt empty. Mike took care of the last details of our divorce that same week. We had signed everything months ago, but there were payments to settle. James and his network owed their victims over $500,000 in damages. You and your ex each are getting about $30,000, Mike said, sliding the paperwork across his desk. I don't want it. Neither does she. She already told her lawyer she's giving it to a women's shelter. I signed mine over to a domestic violence program. It felt better than keeping it. The division of our things had gone surprisingly smooth. She kept the house. I couldn't stay there anymore with all those reminders of what had happened. I took the lake cabin we had bought 5 years ago, back when we thought we would grow old together. She helped me move my things out on a Sunday. We mostly worked in silence, occasionally asking, "Do you want this?" about shared items. We donated the wedding china. Neither of us wanted those reminders. "The dishwasher's making that noise again," she said as I loaded the last box. "There's a YouTube video on how to fix it. A guy named Steve. Really clear instructions." "Thanks." We stood in the driveway, unsure how to say goodbye. "Take care," we both said at the same time. Then we laughed awkwardly. That was it. 10 years were packed into a U-Haul and an uncomfortable farewell. I started dating again 6 months later. I met Lindsay at a bookstore cliché, but at least it wasn't online. She was a librarian, divorced with no kids. On our first date, I told her everything. The affairs, the cameras, the revenge, all of it. "That's a lot," she said, stirring her coffee. "Yeah." "But you're in therapy?" "Twice a week." "And the surveillance stuff?" "I don't even have a Ring doorbell anymore." She thought about it. "Okay, but we go slow. Really slow." We did. It took 3 months before she stayed over, 6 months before she left a toothbrush at my place. A year before we moved in together, every step was talked about carefully. It was tiring, but nice. My ex was also starting her life again. I heard from friends in our small town that she had opened an art studio downtown. She began painting abstract art that seemed to sell well to people who understood struggle. I drove by once but didn't go inside. She was seeing someone too, a sculptor who had lost his wife to illness. They met in a support group, which felt fitting. I saw them once at the farmer's market. They were buying tomatoes and talking about pasta sauce. She seemed at peace. 2.5 years after our divorce, we ended up at the same wedding for a college friend we both cared about. I brought Lindsay, and she brought David, the sculptor. Of course, we ended up sitting at the same table. The wedding planners surely had a sense of humor. "This is awkward," my ex said, trying to break the ice. "Very awkward," I agreed. But then Lindsay and David started chatting about an art show at the museum, and it quickly felt like just another dinner party. My ex and I talked about safe topics, her mom's surgery, my dad's retirement, the bride's odd dress choice. "Your forum really helped my cousin," she said quietly while our partners were getting drinks. "Her husband was treating her poorly." The resources you shared, the support from others, it really helped her. Your self-defense program is in the Times, I replied. I saw the article. 12 locations now. 15. 3 more are coming next month. That's fantastic. We paused for a moment, thinking. 2 people who had hurt each other were now building things that helped others avoid our mistakes. Lindsay returned with drinks and touched my shoulder, checking in to see if I was okay. I squeezed her hand. Across the table, David whispered something to my ex that made her genuinely laugh, not the forced laughter I remembered from the end of our marriage. We should head out, Lindsay said after the cake cutting. Long drive ahead. We all stood and did that awkward goodbye dance. My ex hugged Lindsay, which surprised everyone. I shook David's hand. Then my ex and I stood there, unsure of what to do next. I hope you find happiness, she said finally. You too. A year later, she sent me a simple invitation to her gallery opening. Thought you might like to see this. No pressure. I decided to go by myself. Lindsay offered to join, but I felt this was something I needed to do alone. The paintings were raw and beautiful. They were colorful and seemed to express everything about our marriage, the good times, the decline, the explosion, and the aftermath. I spent 20 minutes in front of one called Surveillance. It was dark, filled with deep blues and blacks, with little spots of red that looked like lights or drops of something serious, depending on how you looked at it. She appeared next to me, holding 2 glasses of wine. Is this too obvious? She asked. No. It's just right. It's awful, but it works. We walked through the gallery together. She talked about some pieces and stayed quiet about others. The last painting stood out with lighter colors, warm oranges and soft yellows. Phoenix, she said. It felt right. I want it, I said. It's not for sale, she replied. So, why show it to me? Because I wanted you to see it, to know that something good came from all that chaos. I ended up buying another piece called Aftermath. It had grays and silvers with little green shoots breaking through. It's in my office now, reminding me that life can thrive even in tough situations. My book came out the next spring titled The Hunt Club, a memoir of betrayal and rebuilding. A small publisher, not much promotion, but it connected with readers, men and women who faced their own challenges and needed proof they could make it through. A week after it was published, I received a card with no return address, but I recognized the handwriting. Page 247 made me cry. Thank you for being honest about your part. We were both hurt and hurting each other. I'm glad we finally stopped. Page 247 was where I openly shared that I had been distant for years before her affairs, that I had treated her more like an object than a partner, and that my constant watching was a sign of my worries, instead of real understanding. The last time I saw her was 5 years after our divorce, by chance at our old coffee shop. I was there meeting a client, and she was waiting to pick David up from the airport. Hey, she said as she reached the counter. Hey. We ended up sharing a table. It was just 10 minutes. She told me about training to be a trauma counselor, adding it to her self-defense teaching. I shared my news about Lindsay's pregnancy, how I felt both scared and thrilled about becoming a dad. You'll be a great father, she assured me. You've learned from your past. You would have been a wonderful mother, I replied, thinking of the loss we had never really processed. Maybe. In another life. We spoke about our parents, her father's illness, and my mom's new partner. Just normal talk for 2 divorced people. The kind where you know too much about each other to be strangers, but not enough to be friends. I should go, she said, checking her phone. David's plane arrives soon. Yeah, I have a meeting too. We stood up, and for a moment, I thought we might hug. Instead, we just smiled the kind of genuine smiles that reach your eyes. Thank you, she said. For what? For stopping me that night. From James. If things had been different, if we had gone through with our plans, we would have hurt each other even more. Yeah, she said, and then she left first. I watched her walk away through the window. She walked with confidence, head held high, so different from the sad woman who had cried on our bathroom floor years before. She had built herself back up into someone new. I had changed too. That is the tricky part about destruction. Sometimes it is needed for rebuilding. We had burned our marriage down, hurt others along the way. Yet, from those ruins, we each created something better, separate from each other. Lindsay had a baby 3 months later, a boy. We named him Michael, after my grandfather, not someone from my past. When I held him for the first time, I thought about how patterns repeat, unless we decide to change them. My ex sent a congratulations card when the news went online. It was simple and nice, with a small gift for the special care unit where Michael stayed for his first week. I don't know if she and David have children. I stopped following her life after that meeting at the coffee shop. Some stories need a clear end, a line between the chapters. The online forum is still active, with over 100,000 members now. Her program for self-defense became well known across the country. We turned our pain into something helpful for others, just not together. Sometimes I dream about that night when she walked in with James, the moment everything changed. In my dreams, I handle it differently. Sometimes I go through with it. Sometimes I stand up to him. Sometimes I just leave and never come back. But I always wake up next to Lindsay, in our home without cameras, with our son asleep down the hall. I feel thankful for how it all turned out. The destruction was necessary. The pain taught us lessons. The endings separate, but moving on was the only truly happy result possible. We needed to let go of each other to find ourselves. And that is the truest thing I can say about it all.